You know how to help others prepare to buy and sell properties, but do you know how to help yourself prepare to buy and sell properties? We're going to talk about that today. Stay tuned. This episode of Keeping It Real is brought to you by Real Geeks. How many homes are you going to sell this year? Do you have the right tools? Is your website turning soft leads into interested buyers? Are you spending money on leads that aren't converting? Well, Real Geeks is your solution. Find out why agents across the country choose Real Geeks as their technology partner. Real Geeks was created by an agent for agents. They pride themselves on delivering a sales and marketing solution so that you can easily generate more business. Their agent websites are fast and built for lead conversion with a smooth search experience for your visitors. Real Geeks also includes an easy-to-use agent CRM. So once a lead signs up on your website, you can track their interest and have great follow-up conversations. Real Geeks is loaded with a ton of marketing tools to nurture your leads and increase brand awareness. Visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod and find out why realtors come to Real Geeks to generate more business. Again, visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod. And now, onto our show. Today's episode is brought to you by Corded.io. Are you looking for agents to join your brokerage or team? Now, as a real estate recruiter, I can tell you the answer is always yes. But most agents aren't looking to move right now. So how do you know who to contact? Well, what if I were to tell you there's a recruiting and retention tool powered by artificial intelligence that shows you exactly which agents in your local market are looking to leave their brokerage right now and which agents at your own firm are also looking to leave you? Now, I've been recruiting realtors for 15 years and I've hired over 2,000 agents. I can tell you with no exaggeration, this is the tool I've been waiting for. Corded's AI looks for trends across dozens of variables for each agent in your market and shows you which agents they believe are likely to move. Not only does it do that, but Corded's AI went and visited my recruiting website and read everything I offer. So now when I'm recruiting, Corded's AI tells me exactly what to say based on that agent's needs and what my brokerage can offer. It even writes emails for me. I've never seen anything like it, and I use it every single day. Now, if you are looking to grow your brokerage, Corded.io is the best tool out there. Visit Corded.io to schedule a demo. Again, that's Corded.io. And now, onto the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I'm your guide and host through the show. And in just a moment, we're going to be speaking to financial strategist specifically for real estate agents. His name is Brandon Green. He's amazing, and you're going to love this episode. There's so many great strategies that you're probably not deploying in your own business. He's going to help you figure that out. Before we get to Brandon, just a quick reminder, tell a friend about this episode and our podcast. We appreciate it. Help another agent, which helps us as well. And please leave us a review wherever you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever. Let us know what you think of the show. We appreciate you. And check out our sponsors. Our sponsors are amazing. All right, guys, let's get to it. My conversation with Brandon Green. What is the best piece of advice you ever received in real estate?
DJ, the best piece of advice I got was from a real estate team owner who had sold his team about 2 years into me being a brand new agent. And I really looked up to him. I was like, how'd you do it? Right? 30-year instant success guy. And I remember he said, Brandon, you, as soon as possible, need to begin to treat your business like a business. And even if you never sell your real estate business, start today thinking as if you would. And that was such great foundational advice for me year two, right? I didn't contextualize that for sure, but it made me think about my business immediately different than I think I probably would have otherwise.
It's wonderful. And on the flip side, what's the worst piece of advice you ever received in real estate?
I remember this agent in the office. She was like 85, still showing houses on a Saturday, right? Had a bit of a raspy voice, was bitter she couldn't go to brunch. And she's like, you just need to sell another house, sell another house, sell another house, and it's all going to work out. I remember she had that like voice to it. And I remember thinking, maybe, I mean, I could, short term, that's really helpful, but
Sure.
maybe that's not the long-term game.
Yeah, maybe there's more. Yeah.
Maybe there's more to it. I don't know that I want to be, bitter about not going to brunch and instead doing an open house, when well into my later years. All right. So that was an interesting conversation I remember having with her one Saturday morning as she was hauling her signs to her open house and I was in the office working on a contract.
Sort of sounds like the opposite of freedom to an extent.
Yeah.
Not that we all don't need to do the work and sell that next house, but if that's the only sort of way you see as a path forward, that certainly can feel defeating, I suppose. Once you're, slogging around signs when you're, older and maybe wish to not do that as much.
Yes.
So, well, Brandon Green is our guest today on this episode. We are so excited. He is from Alchemy of Money. We're going to tell you more about his company. Alchemyofmoney.co is where you can go to learn about it. We will have a link to that in our show notes. Well, let me tell you about Brandon. Brandon Green was born in Southwest Wyoming. So he's the first person you probably know from Wyoming. Well, not anymore. People are now flocking to Wyoming, but certainly that wasn't always the case. But he grew up in Iowa, which is right next door to where I live in Chicago. And in 1999, he moved to Washington, D.C. with no money, no prospects, no college degree. Luckily, he had a knack for sales, went into real estate in 2001. Today, he's an award-winning entrepreneur and investor committed to helping other real estate entrepreneurs reach financial freedom quicker and with more ease. In 2022, Brandon launched his newest venture, Alchemy of Money, Inc., a tech-enabled financial services company providing bookkeeping, tax strategy, and filing, fractional CFO services, financial coaching, and investments exclusively for real estate professionals. I will break into this for just a quick moment to say, consider getting yourself a CFO for your business. That's called a fractional CFO. If you aren't, you're, this massive corporation, you can actually do that with Brandon's help. We'll tell you more about that in a bit. But you might know Brandon from his time co-founding and leading Keller Williams Capital Properties in our nation's capital. Under his leadership, it was named Best Employer by the Washington Post and grew to be among the top 0.2% of all brokerages nationwide, with 7 locations and over 1,000 realtors. Brandon has been featured by the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Fortune Magazine, called in to support Remax, Coldwell Banker, Compass, EXP, Sotheby's, Berkshire Hathaway, and Long & Foster. You know those names. These are the companies that call Brandon, and we are grateful to have him on our show today for a little bit of time. Alchemyofmoney.co is where you go to learn about Brandon. And Brandon, I'm so sorry. Please give your Instagram.
Brandon Green Now.
Brandon Green Now. We'll have a link to both of those in our show notes. Brandon, welcome.
Thanks, DJ. Glad to be here.
Very excited to have you. You have been in this industry 25 years and you've done a lot of really impressive things, is for lack of a better word, lots of different things. And, it was funny. We asked Brandon ahead of time, what do you want to talk about? Because you have so much knowledge and so much wisdom. He said, I see agents helping people all day long with buying and selling property, and whether they're primary residents, investors, whatever. And he says, I don't see them helping themselves as much as I'd like to. And I thought, boy, that's a great reminder, even for me too. I'm in this business. How often am I helping myself in that particular journey? Not as much as I should. So we're bringing on Brandon today to talk more about that. But Brandon, let's get all the way back started in 2001 when you moved, from Iowa all the way to DC. By the way, I just went to my very first Iowa football game last year. My girlfriend's family, a lot of them are in Iowa, and we had some tickets that were not being used that week, and I got to see that type of football game, which was really great. And I got to see what they call the greatest. I'm blanking on the word, but the greatest sort of ritual in college football, where there's There is a children's ward of a hospital. I believe it's a cancer ward, and it overlooks the stadium. And
Oh,
after the
right.
first quarter,
Sure.
yeah, everybody, including the players on both sides and everyone in the stadium, turns and waves towards the children. And boy, that was a moment to behold. So if anyone ever gets a chance to go to an Iowa football game, boy, that is something you will not forget. But anyway, you moved to DC, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I did. I moved to DC just looking for some opportunity. Wanted to get in a big city. Didn't really have particularly any plans other than probably go to school here. I had graduated from high school in Iowa and then went on the road touring with an international musical organization, singing and dancing and having a great time. And at some point after doing that for a couple of years, I was like, well, either I need to pursue performing arts full time or I need to figure out something else. And decided something else was my option. So yeah, landed in the area doing cold calling for a staffing firm. That was my first job. So my job was to find a list of companies, cold call them, and see if they'd be interested in hiring us to help them recruit for their open positions. And traditional sales back environment. Ring a bell when you make a sale, do 100 cold calls a day. You got to take 5 people to lunch, close 3 deals, And honestly, I really liked it. I liked the energy around it. I liked the fact I could see a direct correlation between my efforts and my income. It didn't have a lot of meaningfulness to it. And so, after a couple of years, I was like, maybe there's something else here. And so late one night, I was watching a Carlton Sheets infomercial on how to buy real estate.
Sure.
Carlton Sheets, I don't know, how long has he been doing this? 60 years? So I don't know.
He was one of the first guys to really do a lot on television about real estate investing in particular. Yeah,
he was your early marketing influencer, right? With how he
he was. Yeah,
he was, and
he may have been the first true real estate investor influencer. That's
right. Yeah, it's true. And and I bought his course. Right, this was now in the early 2000s, so it was like, mail it to your house and so forth. And I remember thinking, DJ, like, okay, yeah, there's probably more to it than rich and be on a beach with the martini in 90 days. But it did inspire me to say, well, how can I do this? And how can I get into the real estate game myself? So I bought my first investment property using an FHA 203K renovation loan, which you're not supposed to use for investment properties. I don't know, are we recording this? But I bought it and I sold that property, made some money, and I thought, wow, maybe this is my jam. So that's what got me into real estate, was really aspiring for something bigger for myself than, relentless cold calling forever. And I liked the intersection of people, income possibility, and I really liked old houses and real estate and renovating them. So that was the beginning.
Yeah. And how did it proceed from there? Did you go sort of fully into the investor side, or were you still both doing traditional real estate brokerage, helping public with their primary residences, or was it just investor full steam?
First, as an investor, I quickly realized, well, I could buy one with the W-2 income I had from my other job, but that was it. Then I needed to come up with another way to make money, so I quit the W-2 job and went full-time into sales. I could see that I could use my income from my sales business to purchase more real estate.
Yeah.
So I applied the cold calling skills that I'd learned in the other environment to real estate sales and door knocking. So I just started gridded out a neighborhood. I was like, well, there's got to be some sort of ratio here of X number of doors, Y number of people answer them, Z number of people invite me in, and A converts, B signs up for. So I just applied those tried and true sales principles I had learned in the other shop over to real estate. And I quickly learned, like, nobody works that hard in real estate. Like, nobody is door knocking 100 doors a day. Like,
no, that's
so tough. I thought, well, if I do that, then I could really take off. So I sold 12 million that first year, 20 million in real estate the second year, deploying literally night, day, rain, snow, whatever, door knocking, and then hosting open houses for more senior agents in the office who didn't want to do it anymore, in order to fund my real estate investment business and my personal lifestyle, right? I had no other income.
Sure.
So that's what pushed me into the industry fully as both an investor and a practitioner in sales.
I love that you took the money that you earned in sort of the traditional side of it and decided to reinvest it into, a different side of it, which would, ideally basically funding, you could say funding retirement, you could say funding, current cash flow lifestyle, some nice tax benefits along the way as well. And yeah, I know a lot of guys who, in fact, this happens a lot, I think, on the lending side. So people who are around loans all day, a lot of times they go, wait a minute, why am I not doing more? I own my own condo or where I live, but I'm seeing all these other people get loans and, work on the cash flow side. And boy, it seems very enticing, but I don't see as many realtors taking advantage of that. So let's dive into what are some of the challenges, or where are some of the roadblocks that realtors, maybe they're not thinking about doing this. Maybe they're feeling like they don't have the income to do it. Or maybe they're thinking, gosh, I have to fund my own individual SEP IRA, or I have to, contribute to other expenses, and they're not setting aside money maybe to do this. So I'd love to talk about where you see agents kind of first kind of going wrong, or not necessarily going wrong, but just not exploring this as an opportunity.
So first, if they already know intellectually it's an opportunity, and I think most do,
sure,
then either they're not truly being honest with themselves about the amount of time that's necessary to run two businesses, because that's what it is. It's two businesses. It's an investment business and it's a sales business. So that's 80 hours a week. Let's call it what it is, right?
Yeah.
So they're not giving it the time it needs to actually get one or the other up and running for a lot of legitimate reasons. Could have family, other obligations, whatever. When I did it, look, I had no family, I had no friends, I had there was nothing else going on in my life. So I put all I had into it. So I think you've got to organize your life in such a way that you can go all in on something for a period of time at the consequence of something else.
Sure.
And most people don't want to make that trade-off.
Yeah.
But that's the truth of it. But if they do, there's yet another issue, and that is taxes. And I remember quickly realizing that while I was getting ahead on my income and I was acquiring more assets, I was getting behind on my taxes, because I was using all my income to purchase real estate and to fund what was a growing lifestyle, let's be honest.
Sure.
I like to have fun. I like to spend money. So that was like increasing. And a lot of the tax benefits around real estate don't kick in immediately. They come over time. And so I found myself with the third leg of this stool going, Uncle Sam saying, hey, I appreciate the fact you've taken all your active cash flow and invested in real estate and taken some wild trips, but what about me? And so I got in the hole with the IRS early on, like by $500,000. And it was very embarrassing, DJ, very painful, very hard to deal with. I can now see, a couple decades later, that is a huge hindrance for people executing this game, is not figuring out that third component, the third partner at the table, if you will, who is requiring remuneration and how to do that and still fund your business, fund your lifestyle, and fund investments.
Well, it's certainly understand the feeling like you should have done it, because of course we always feel that way about mistakes, or at least it's a natural way to think. We should have done better. And at the same time, we think, well, what was he doing with that money? He was actually funding his business, and he was actually using it for a greater good. It wasn't, entirely going to your own personal enjoyment. And so it's something that, we have to, it's easy to forget about that third partner, I suspect, because of course, realtors, when they get paid, they don't necessarily, those taxes aren't taken out right away. Maybe, if they're disciplined, they have it automatically going to somewhere else where they can't see it for a while and just sort of under almost like lock and key. But if they're like most of us, we see that big amount hit our bank and we don't think, I should probably put a third of that somewhere else, because of course, nobody wants to think that way. I don't want to think that way. I don't want to think a third of anything.
And we might think about it, but we don't actually do it, right? Actually, I didn't even think about it. Honestly, the first 3 years I got in the business, it was year 3, DJ, where I was like, wait a minute, I think I need to file taxes. Right? Because I had all sales training. I was learning about being a real estate investor, but nobody, I wasn't being trained. I wasn't seeking it out. I'm sure it was available, but I wasn't seeking out business training, how to run a profit and loss statement and manage cash flow. And I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in selling houses, helping people, buying real estate, grow. And the rest is going to figure itself out. And I hit a real wall. and realized, oh shoot, right there. No, yeah, no, you can get pretty far with that energy, but
Sure.
you can't probably accomplish ultimately what you want because you end up hitting some sort of wall like I did.
Right. Yeah. At some point, there's it's this three-legged stool that third leg is not there, and it's getting wobbly, and all of a sudden now it's the most important leg of the stool because it's affecting everything else. And again, certainly a relatable topic for a lot of us. I think
Yeah.
all of us have, especially when we're being paid the full amount from of our commissions, right to our bank
Yeah.
account. It is so easy to not have a disciplined approach to putting that money in sort of buckets. And I've fallen prey to that myself. It's not something that I think anybody cannot relate to. So I think you probably just certainly connected with a lot of people on the call. And then there's the issue of education. We start to
Yes.
think about, okay, well, what, aside from just moving a third of it somewhere else, and letting it sit in a money market, and which is fine. But there are other options as well. And, there's ways to maybe reduce that amount that you have to pay.
Yes.
And there are strategies that are,
Yes.
they are afforded to us under the tax code that is not about, trying to pull a fast one on the government, but actually to take advantage in a positive way of what the government allows us to do and what the government really sort of encourages us to do in order to fund. And, small businesses are the backbone of this country. We're talking small business.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, a lot of times small businesses don't have this understanding. You're out there putting on all the hats, you're in charge of growth, you're in charge of customer service, you're in charge of compliance. And, all of a sudden you have this, oh, I don't have a CFO. I didn't have somebody sort of reminding me to do these things because I can't do everything. So let's talk about that. So what do you usually recommend for agents as a way to get started to think about managing their finances more effectively?
Yeah. So I remember having this conversation with my financial mentor as I was trying to figure out how to get out of this $500,000 hole, right? He's like, well, and he said just what you said, right? Well, as a business owner, as an asset owner, you have all these tax strategies you can deploy in order to significantly reduce your tax rate. And I was like, well, sign me up. Like, let's do it. He goes, yeah, here's the problem. You don't have any underlying data to actually organize into the strategies. You don't have a profit and loss statement. You're not tracking your expenses by category. You don't have any reconciled bank statements. Like, there's nothing I can do for you because you don't have any of the data. And I was like, oh, right. So that sent me down a 3-year journey. And so what I would say to that, DJ, for anybody who's listening that might resonate with this situation is most people need to start with better data. Yeah. And the data takes the form of good bookkeeping and an accurate statement of income and expenses reconciled monthly that shows actually what you've got going on. So you can take it to a professional, whether it's at Alchemy or somewhere else, and saying, here's actually what I'm doing in report format. What strategies are available to me? So we like to skip to the strategies, like sign me up for saving $80,000 on my taxes. But the data has to be in a way that can be done. And the other thing I learned that is sort of a cousin to that is the IRS has this like this or that. It's never all or both. So for example, a strategy that many people probably know about is some form of retirement funding to reduce your tax liability, a 401k or an IRA. So the tax code essentially says, hey, you can fund your future and we'll give you tax benefit. But you actually have to put the cash in the account. Right. So you either pay it to us, Uncle Sam, or you pay it to yourself, but you still have to pay it, which means you still have to have the cash to do it. You can't have spent it elsewhere. So getting to a place where you have the cash and have the data to deploy the strategies to reduce the overall amount you're paying in taxes, you're still going to outlay more or less the same amount of cash.
Sure.
But you're going to outlay it to yourself versus the IRS. And I think that's a little bit less understood. People are like, well, it's just going to be less cash out the door to anybody.
Right.
And it's actually no. It's less cash to the IRS and more to yourself via investments.
Right.
But it's still money that has to be invested, which means you still have to have it. which means you still need to run your business well and profitable in order to have the cash to do those strategies.
That's a really important distinction. I think that's a nuance that I'm glad you mentioned, which is this: yes, you are, if done properly, and you're in a certain category of income for your business where you can reduce some of that that tax liability. It becomes really easy to see that savings as just extra income that I get to because I own the company. I get access to, and yes, I guess technically that's true to a degree. Yes, you do have access to that, and yes, you can do what you wish with that, or you could do what other responsible businesses do and think about how do we use this to continue to keep my company solvent? How do we use this to keep maybe grow my company? And how do we just do the responsible thing, which of course is what a CFO's job is to make sure that a company is doing all of the right moves financially for the future.
It's like, what's that show that he's like, but it's a write-off. And he's like, David, but a write-off, you have to have the cat. What is that? Schitt's Creek or something? Where he's like, yeah, well, I just write it off.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
No.
Like, still pay for it. Right, so. Yeah, you might get 30%, 35% of it back possibly. But you're still, it's I thought that too. When I first started my own business, I was like, wait, what exactly is a write-off? What does it mean? And I had that thought that, I don't have to pay for this.
Write it
must just mean somehow it's free. No,
exactly.
Wouldn't that be nice? So tell us about Alchemy of Money.
Yeah. So all that experience many years later informed my real passion around this topic. And that passion led to forming a company to help other people go through the journey, hopefully more successfully and faster than I did, around their finances. So today we help real estate entrepreneurs around the country with their bookkeeping, like getting the data, the production of profit and loss reports and balance sheets, and understanding and interpreting what the data is telling you. And then with their taxes, either tax strategy or tax issues or just tax filing, whatever somebody actually needs. So we're running the back-end finance of agents and teams all around the country. And it's been really exciting to do that. And so ironic, DJ, like the biggest, like personally, like some of the biggest problems I had early in my career, I now own a company actually helping people do it. I met with a mentor, that same mentor I was actually telling you about a moment ago. I met with him for lunch about 3 weeks ago. And he leans over the table and he goes, isn't it funny that you own an accounting firm? I was like, he's like, I never had that on my bingo card for you 20 years ago. I'm like, I don't have it on a bingo card for myself. Right. So that's what we're doing, DJ, is we're saying, look, we know agents. There's nobody who knows agents. But we know the issues, we know the opportunities, and we help people execute those.
I love that. So let's talk about some of the services you offer.
Yeah. So the first one is the generation of a profit and loss statement, and saying, let's pull all of your income and expenses together and create a report that tells you how much money you're really making. A lot of people manage their finance through their bank app.
Yep.
I have cash or I don't have cash. That is completely irrelevant in terms of whether you have profit and how much tax you owe, whether you're running your business well or not. It's no secret. The market's been tough for a while, continues to be. It is not really feasible for most people to just wing it and be successful year after year. Like everybody eventually comes to the same conclusion in their business if they stay long enough, which is I need a profit and loss statement. So that's one big core business is the production and interpretation of that. So it's not just here's your data, but it's also saying, for example, DJ, okay, you're spending 14.5% of your gross commission income on lead generation and conversion. The model for a business of your size is 9.5%.
Right.
So what are you doing with that extra? Is that needed? What's your return on investment on that? Oh, and by the way, you're paying 5% more of your gross towards compensation in employees than the model. Is that working or is that not working for you? Like, let's have a real discussion around that. So it is back to that first really important, good piece of advice I got early on, which was treat my business like a business. This is how you do that, is through a P&L. So that's one big service is through the bookkeeping side.
That is such a really important P&L. It's funny. I've talked to other sort of tax specialists on the show over the years. They don't really talk profit and loss as much as we're doing now. Not that they don't, I'm sure, wish for everyone to have one, because I'm sure they do. We just haven't talked about it. So I appreciate this conversation because, again, a lot of us do have accountants and we think, okay, well, I've got an accountant and I do have a corporation set up, so I'm paying myself. So I sort of understand I'm doing something with pass-through income, and that's good for me with tax liability. But do I really understand my expenditures? Do I really understand the connection of that to my profit or my revenue? And am I adjusting it according to the benchmarks of other successful businesses, which that I am not doing. I can tell you for sure that I am not doing that. And that is something, as you were talking about, I go, boy, I wonder how much I pay in different, I have assistants and I have different expenses, and I just pay them because I pay them because that's what they charge. And it seems to be the right amount. But do I really know what percentage of that to my overall revenue is? I don't. And it just doesn't, it's like, it's never seemed that important, but of course it's important. And it's important for any business to understand, what you're paying out. So I am going to work on that myself. So thank you. And I'm sure you've probably inspired a lot of us to do it.
I think a distinction that's worth making is most people have a profit and loss statement for tax purposes only.
Sure.
Which is fine. And it's helpful to help your tax filer file your taxes. But I'm talking about something entirely different. This is a business P&L.
A living, breathing document that updates. Yeah. I have one once a year. I see it. I see
I have it. Check. Like, okay.
Yeah, done. But then it's never thought about again until the next year when I have to give her all of the revenue and expenses, and then she creates another one. Yeah, we are talking about a living document that gets updated on a regular basis, that gets studied, and it gets adjusted to. It's like, hey, the market's down right now. If your income is down right now, have you also, in proportion, decreased or at least looked at your expenses and figured out how do I adjust for the downturn right now?
And look, a lot of people ask me, well, why do I really need one? And my answer is, I mean, you really don't. You only do in the context of some sort of goal. So if you are trying to allocate more profit from your business to make more investments, or to pursue that beach house, or to retire someday, or to send your kids to college, there has to be some sort of personal goal that you're trying to achieve, or pain point you're trying to solve for, perhaps. Then you reverse engineer into the machine that is your business. And you say, how do I make this machine run more optimally? Now, if you have no pain points and you're at 100% of your potential, then I'm like, good for you. You should be on DJ's podcast.
What percentage, what would you say, what percentage of agents are currently operating with their profit and loss without somebody helping them at 100%? Is it, are we talking about there's like a 1% outlier that kind of just knows how to do this? Maybe they come from the accounting background, but I would assume 99% of agents probably could use a boost.
There's always an outlier, right? Who has got a weird set of skills that they came to the real estate business with this skill set, and they're just good because of something else. But it's really rare. It's probably in the 1 or 2%. Wow. When you ask agents why did they get in the business, how often do people like, well, because I just love accounting. Like, wait, what? No, like, it doesn't have. So you have to find a why in order to pay attention to this. And that has to be a powerful motivator. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it. So we spend a fair amount of time, DJ, in our calls with people saying, look, like, why do you actually want to invest the time? Because this is not an autoplay. This isn't. Like, you actually have to engage in this process, or you're going to get a report that you're not going to do anything with. So why even get the report, right? So there is some sort of corresponding, I'm trying to grow my business. I'm trying to buy X number of real pieces of investment property. I'm trying to, like, what are you working to achieve, and how can the business run more transparently and optimally help you do that?
And I think we should talk just briefly about the psychological benefit of having this information and tracking it and adjusting it on almost a daily basis, with something like a QuickBooks or, whatever software or system one might be using, or working directly with a fractional CFO or some sort of partner, because this is, what we're really talking about is a little bit of pain up front, a little bit of, okay, I got to take a good look in the mirror at myself completely naked, which isn't always the most fun thing for any of us to do. But I'm going, as a result of that, I am going to understand, I'm going to feel now more in control of my destiny. I'm
Yes.
going to understand what needs to be done. And it's not going to be as sort of at the end of the month, I look and I see my bank account is going to be more, it's going to be more reliable. What is in there, what isn't in there, where it's going.
Yeah.
And I'll know what I can afford to spend for my personal use, my business use, and what I need to save and where I need to save it. And there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction in just kind of knowing the plan. And it is, it's, it's a lot easier, for example, for me when I wake up and I have all my meals prepared for the week or for the, even just for that day. And I get to work. I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Every Saturday I have to cook. I have to cook a bunch. I have to plan this out. Or Monday noon at 12 o'clock, I start to think, what am I going to have for lunch today? And then I
Yeah.
have to make that decision. And it's like, but I want to eat healthy, but I don't want to eat healthy right now because I'm stressed. But I want to, like, it becomes this
Yeah.
sort of battle. And it's like, if I just have my meal prepared, I don't have to make that decision.
Mhm.
I've already decided in advance it was a healthy option. And all I have to do is execute the plan. I have to actually just execute this healthy option. And, sure, you allow yourself some wiggle room there. But for the most part, you're like, okay, one less hard decision to make. And that feels powerful and it feels easy. And
Yeah.
it allows me to then take that mental energy, that finite amount of motivation and discipline that we have each day, and then apply it elsewhere. So it really is kind of similar to that, maybe for a lot of us. And so if we're willing to do that for our own physical health, right, maybe we should consider something like that for our financial health.
Yes. And most of the time people are come to us because of some sort of external thing.
Yeah.
The top two probably are, I want to make a hire, and be it a first hire or a 15th hire, I want to make a key hire, and I want to know my business is ready. And because I don't want to let that person down. A lot of us are willing to let ourselves down,
Sure.
interestingly, but we're not willing to let somebody else down. So maybe you're okay flying by the seat of your pants, but when you bring in a bunch of people, you're not willing to do it anymore. So there's this inflection point around hiring. We met with somebody the other day who's bringing in a COO, big hire, big salary. They're like, can I afford it? That's a trigger. Or the other trigger is, I'm paying too much in taxes. I know it. And/or I have issues with the IRS. And those are the two things externally kind of that are generally bringing people to this next level conversation in their business that leads to questions around P&Ls and tax strategies and figuring out how they move things to the next place.
Well, and if we think about, again, this sort of psychological pressure of those two scenarios of I
Yeah.
want to grow and I want to make sure I can afford to grow in this particular way.
Yep.
Can I do this? Is this a financially wise decision?
Yeah.
And then the other way is I've got this pressure on me to fix something that maybe wasn't done perfectly in the past. And both of those, boy, they feel totally different just talking about them, don't they? There's
do.
one feels like a heavier weight. The other feels like an opportunity that maybe it's not the perfect right time for this, but they'll tell me that. But at least I know, and at least I don't have that weight on me going, oh my God, how am I going to make payroll
Yeah.
this month?
Yeah, exactly. So, look, we do bookkeeping and taxes, but what we really do is help people sleep better at night
Yeah, that's it.
by giving them the clarity they need to run their business in the aim of their goal, whatever that is, and to do it more efficiently, more effectively, with more profit, to be able to increase their net worth. And like we started early in the conversation, actually buy some of these amazing houses that they're selling on behalf of other people, or be in a position to do it if they actually wish to, versus just aspiring and wishing someday that they maybe could be as successful as their clients are and own those amazing assets.
Yeah, let's talk about real estate investing as a way, as a possible retirement vehicle, or at least a wealth generation
Yes.
builder, and generational wealth, I should say. And the idea that, home prices have historically, again, past results do not equal future performance, but that historically the prices of values of homes have trended upwards over time, over long swaths of time. And so is the market, the equity market in particular. But we know there's dips in both, and right now we're experiencing a dip in, I guess, in both sides. But there are other alternatives to just 401k investing. There's certainly reasons to do them, and obviously, lots of us do sort of traditional equity bond investing for our financial retirement, and then there's other group of people that do that and can contribute to investments and see that as a retirement vehicle.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, how where do you see, not that there's one or the other, but that maybe explain to our audience why that second vehicle is something that's often considered as a retirement vehicle.
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts on this, and some of them are counter popular. But look, as real estate people, we often over index in real estate. Because we like it. We're good at it. We see it. It's handleable. It's touchable. You can do stuff with it. But when I look across my success and failures and those of the people I see a number of people who do well in real estate and buy and hold, but I see just as many, if not more, who don't, because they underappreciate the fact that you're buying an asset that has big expenses, and one air conditioning going out in one single family rental property in pick your state could tank your return on investment for 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
So I love real estate, and I think real estate needs to be part of a broader balanced strategy around wealth creation that needs to be guided by clear professionals who understand what they're doing. And as real estate professionals, I'm talking to specifically, we probably need to think even more carefully about other things other than real estate too.
Sure.
And to make sure that we're, being logical about it. Finally, I'll say my experience was, and I see it for a lot of people, is the underappreciation that when you do choose to invest in real estate, and I built a fairly substantial residential real estate portfolio, I realized it became its own business.
Sure.
It wasn't actually an investment per se. It was a business.
Yeah.
And the distinction is, an investment, I'm using my money to make money. A business, I'm using my time and my money to make money. Heavy on time.
Yeah.
So I got up to, I think, 20 residential units. And I was like, whew, holy jumping. And I personally, this was not investment advice. It's just my personal desire. I was like, I want to sell these over time and move those money into commercial properties.
Sure.
And other kinds of investments, so that I am focusing my time on my active business efforts and my money on leveraged opportunities that don't require much time at all. So real estate investing is a great place to start. It's a great place to learn, but it's also a great place to be thoughtful about how much time, effort, and money you're putting into the space vis-a-vis other opportunities, and make some smart decisions versus, I've got a real estate guy hat on, I'm therefore only going to invest in real estate.
Right. And I appreciate you sharing what are called, and again, please correct me if this isn't what you were referencing, but commercial real estate sort of investment transactions could be known as syndication deals.
Yes, sure.
Opportunities that, could you just quickly explain to our audience who maybe isn't familiar with the idea of a syndication deal, sort of what those entail? Just broadly speaking.
Look, you can, I would explain it this way. You can take your own money and your own lending capacity and buy something directly. You can take your own money and your own lending capacity and partner with somebody, and the two of you or the three of you or the four of you or whatever buy that asset directly. You can pool money from a lot of different people and buy that asset directly. And or you can be the guy who has money and you give that money to another group who is actually the one that's pulling together the opportunities and making those investments. That other group that's pulling the money together and making those investments can be making those investments in a variety of different structures.
Sure.
Some of which might be direct equity into properties. Some of it might be stock ownership in an entity that owns the properties. It all gets really highly complex really quickly. So for anybody who's interested in saying, look, I don't know that I have the time or money to make a big pull down myself, but I've got 10K. I'd love to invest it with another group who's actually doing the work, and I'm going to be 0.001% of a larger investment. that can be a really good way to leverage, but you got to know enough to be dangerous so that you don't end up losing that money entirely. There's a lot of stuff going on in that space.
It's like basically knowing the time value of money is, do I want to be running this as my own business? Do I
Yes.
want to wear all of those hats? Do I want those 2 a.m. phone calls about the air conditioner going out? Am I willing to take on the hours it just takes to be, in the business?
Right.
Or am I willing to maybe sacrifice a tiny bit of revenue or substantial, depending on, and increase some risk, I guess, because you're now taking it out of your hands into someone else's hands. And, just like you would really investing in the equity market. I mean,
Yeah.
you're really taking it out of your own hands and putting it either to a money manager's hands or directly into a company's hands. And of course, anything can happen. But do you really want to do the due diligence on every single stock in your mutual fund that is being invested, or do you want to just hand it over to an investor that has a proven track record?
Right.
And similar thing can exist on the syndication side. It's very it is a little bit more sort of challenging to probably weed through that information and understand exactly what it is. But there's a lot of good information out there now where we can learn about what those opportunities are, the benefits, the challenges, the risk associated with it. And it's just nice to have that information. You can make the best decision for yourself.
I don't remember who said it, but somebody smart that I'll just take on said, don't invest in anything you don't know. And the way I apply that principle is I know business and I know real estate. I will make direct investments in real estate or businesses I know and understand, not any old business, but businesses I actually really know. Anything else, I am using a professional network whose job it is to do that. Either a certified financial planner whose job it is to manage the equity markets on my behalf, or a venture capital fund whose job it is to make 100 investments, only one of which is going to work, right? So that's how I think about that concept, DJ, is the stuff I'm going to deploy my money in directly, either I know directly, or I'm going to directly put it into professional organizations that I've vetted and trusted that's their one thing to actually do that work.
Well, let's go back to Alchemy of Money. So we know that they can assist with, of course, profit and loss statements. Let's talk about fractional CFOs.
Yeah.
This is a concept that I was not familiar with up until a few years ago. We needed here at our company actually a fractional CEO. So for a slightly different, we actually have somebody we consider a CFO, but we didn't have a CEO. And so I thought, well, gosh, we can't afford that. And I'm not even the primary decision maker for that, but it didn't seem like we could afford it, but we could afford a fractional one. And I said, I don't know what that is. I had never heard that term before. So I suspect a lot of our audience probably hasn't either. Let's talk about what a fractional CFO is and what they do.
When you get to about 3 million in revenue, you get to a place where somebody needs to be sitting at the top to coordinate bookkeeping and data, reports of a variety of kind, taxes, sometimes some quasi HR related stuff, sometimes some quasi legal stuff, and investments. And so a fractional CFO, and there's a variety of different forms of this, and they generally start at $5,000 to $7,000 a month, is a resource that you want to bring on to help coordinate it all and advise the ownership globally about what's going on. So by then you have a team. You've got a bookkeeper team. You've got a tax team. You've got an investment team, right? So this person is coming on to handle all that. So that's why you got to be at least a 3 million in revenue for that to even make sense as a conversation. Most people will bring on a fractional CFO above that, but that's usually where the conversation is had. Below 3 million, it's you as the owner of the business working on that team, making sure that the bookkeeping and taxes are being handled well, that you've got a really good financial planner, that you've got an amazing attorney, and you've got a cadence of meetings that you're meeting with that team with throughout the year. So I love fractional CFOs when the time is right. And I think they can be a really big inflection point for people whose aspirations and ambitions are to continue to grow well above their current income level.
Yeah, and Alchemy of Money really sort of takes on a lot of different roles that you can sort of decide at what point in your business you're at. Once you're at that
Yes.
$3 million annual revenue point, we're now talking about fractional CFO. If we're at the, several $100,000
Yeah.
annual revenue rate, we are now talking about another level of service. But
Yeah.
at any given level, you guys have professionals to assist.
Yeah. And I'll give you the levels real quick.
Yeah.
Generally worth, if you're up to $250,000 in gross commission income, you're still in sort of a DIY mode, right? You're probably, you got your brother's uncle's cousin, or you're doing it yourself, or you're in QuickBooks on Saturday. Like, you got to probably DIY most of it, right? Except for maybe your taxes, but you don't have very complex taxes yet.
Right.
When you go from 250,000 to, let's call it, $1.5 million, then you got to get a bookkeeper on board, and you got to get a strategic CPA on board. So, and at Alchemy, you can just do bookkeeping, you can just do CPA services, you could do both, but that's really up to about 1.5-ish million to 2 million. So that's a big range, from 250,000 to 2 million. But that's where the business is maturing. That's when your revenue streams are maturing. That's when you need these bookkeeping, CPA services to really be robust in that period of time. As you get closer to that 2 million, you got to bring on that certified financial planner, which is preparing you for eventually that 3 million and above, where you bring on the fractional CFO. So if any of your listeners listening right now, just kind of put yourself in those buckets, like, do a little gut check for you. How are you doing with your bookkeeper? Like, are you getting monthly profit and loss statements? Do you know what they say? Is that working for you? Are you making good decisions? If yes, great, continue on. If no, work on that. Next, are you paying your taxes quarterly? Are you getting strategic tax advice in a written report? If not, work on that for the next couple of years, right? If you are, great, move up to financial planning, right? So there is a sequence to this.
Sure.
And you don't just like throw it all on at once, right? You got to build these expertise within your world over time.
I love this idea of just getting so granular with this, which a lot of us, as real estate professionals, maybe we're data people and we like looking at spreadsheets and we really appreciate evaluating the numbers. And then some of us are more maybe on the people side, where we're good at, the sort of interpersonal stuff, where we're able to close deals, build relationships. And this idea that you probably can't be ultra strong in both. You're probably stronger in one than the other, which is just, the way our brains are wired up and our personalities are developed. And the cool part is we can get people to help us with the stuff that isn't either fun to do or easy to do or just stuff we want to do. And we can find people to assist. Look, we have a doctor that checks if we're responsible, checks all of our, does a full blood panel once a year and tells us what condition of health we're in. We know, and if you have a good physician, they're going to say, on the next year, I want you to focus on 1, 2, and 3, do those things, more exercise, less, whatever. And, that's really helpful, because I can look at my physical being and say, I think I know what condition it's in. Of course, I can't look under the hood. I can just see the external stuff. And it gives me some sort of idea of what's going on inside, but not all the information. And I can go to this professional for a relatively inexpensive amount of money and say, let's look at everything inside. And then you're pretty wise, so you tell me what I should do. And, if you do this with mechanics, if you're smart, you take your car in once a year, whether it's broken down or not. And you say, what's going on with it? Do I need to do anything? And you can wait till it's broken down, and then that becomes a lot more stressful. And so we're really talking about, this is adding this into this sort of overall team.
Yeah.
Some people do this with, some people have therapists to deal with their own emotional well-being. We have all sorts of team members. And I love this because on the financial side, I love the idea of not wondering if I can afford something. I like the idea of an opportunity comes my way, because we're real estate people. We see a real estate investment opportunity that we know is going to have cash flow, or it's just going to be this it's great deal. For whatever reason, it's like, oh, I have the information that knows that this is a really good deal. Someone's going to get a really good deal. And instead of saying, can I afford to do it? We just go, should I do it? Should I do it right now? I want to do it. I want to do it. I see it. And versus a business going, we either can afford to do this or we cannot afford to do this. And we have the data to support either of those decisions. That's a position of power. It allows us to more sort of, I think, from a wiser perspective, from a higher level of intellection, to make these decisions, not so much based on the emotion of how exciting it is and how cool it is to buy the new shiny thing, but to actually understand, is this shiny thing in our best long-term interest? Can we do this? And you're talking about hiring. This is a perfect example. So we all want more help. Can we afford more help? That's the first question. And it's not just, well, I've got money in my bank, so yeah, I can, because maybe, you haven't been able to look to see exactly what's going out the door. We think we know what's going out the door, but boy, I don't. I need somebody to look at that once a month and look at my expenditures, and I pay somebody to do that, and to say, hey, you spent too much money in entertainment this month for personal use. I have somebody looking at my personal expenses and really saying, you're going out to eat a little too much. I don't like to hear it, but I need to know it, so that when I'm like, oh, I want to go out to eat because there's this new restaurant, I now know, well, I have a budget for that. I know how much I can spend in a month, and there's actual power in that. As much as I don't want to be a big boy and play by the rules of the whatever the actual rules that are there financially to help to support me, I need to, or else I'm going to put myself in a position of increased stress, and it's going to affect every other part of my life too. So this is a real opportunity for all of us to add someone to our team if we don't have one. And Alchemy of Money is happy and will tell you if you're ready for their services or not. And if you're not, they'll tell you what to do to get ready.
Correct.
And this is a position of power. You will feel better about yourself. You'll feel better about your sort of future, and you'll think of your business more like an actual business, because every successful business has these processes in place. Yep. So yeah, maybe you don't have it today, but now's the day to think about making that first phone call, setting up that meeting, and saying, I want to be in business for the next 15, 20, 30 years. I want to also build something that eventually can support my retirement. I want to make sure I'm not overspending. And I want to make sure that, I'm taking advantage of all the tax opportunities that are afforded to me. So alchemyofmoney.co is where you go to learn that. Tell them that you heard it here, and we appreciate that. Brandon, such a pleasure.
Thank you,
could not be more appreciative. Brandon Green Now is where you find him on Instagram. We will have a link to that in the show notes. But alchemyofmoney.co is his company. He works with real estate agents and entrepreneurs all over the country, helping them do this. He knows he does this because he needed that help himself. And boy, it's funny how things, like you were saying, that you now have this business that you actually needed. You built something for yourself that now can be used to help others. And they say that necessity is the mother of invention, I guess. So that is as true in this case as it is for anything. And it's funny because a lot of agents get their license because they had a experience with another agent. They go, well, I could do that. I could do that better. Or I don't, why, and we're talking about some version of that here. So I think it's pretty cool. He comes from your world. He knows your world. He understands you, and he knows what you need to do, to get to that next level. And he wants to help you. And this is a hard enough business. Let's get all the help we can. It's hard enough just creating business and getting business. Now let's make sure on the back end that we're protecting ourselves so that we can stay in business. Alchemyofmoney.co is the company to check out, and the website. And Brandon, on behalf of the audience, we thank you. You are a busy man. You are a very popular man in this industry. We are grateful to you. So on behalf of everyone, thanks. And on behalf of Brandon and myself, the audience, you're the reason we do this show. We appreciate you. Please support our sponsors. Please check out Brandon's alchemyofmoney.co website. Check him out. Give him a call and see if he'd be a great fit for your business. And we will, before we go, please leave us a review as well. Whatever podcast app you're listening to us, it's a way you can help us continue to grow. Let us know what you think of the show. And lastly, tell a friend. Think of one other agent that could benefit. By the way, all agents could benefit from this conversation. So please shoot them a link. Everybody needs a little bit more, financial spotlight shine on their finances. And, as real estate agents, it's not really on our mind as much as maybe it could be, because it's not right in front of us and we're trying to just close business. So let's shine that light on for another agent, and they'll appreciate it. So feel free to forward them a link. Follow us on all the different social media platforms, and follow Brandon as well. And we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, DJ. See you later.